Hey everyone, this is Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our podcast. Say hello to my little film.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, guys, this is episode 20 of Say Hello to My Little Film. Rob, it's my turn.
The big 2-0.
And we are deep into the month of October.
Yep.
And we don't really do like theme of the movie that we're picking based off the date or the month like too much. We touched on Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
but
I did my episode.
yeah, but it's not mandatory.
Sure.
But
sure.
I did feel some little pressure
Peer
to
pressure.
to do that to try to find a horror movie. And as we've said on this podcast, I don't like horror movies.
That's fair. It's
That's not
canon.
Yeah,
It is
that's canon.
here.
You do
do.
you watch a horror movie every night of October. Like you are
Yep.
all in.
At least one.
Yeah, at least one. You are all in. So for me to find a horror movie that you hadn't seen, there's a very small amount, and this might only be this one, but luckily there is this one.
Well, I need to know what it is, so you better tell me. What do you got?
What do you got? What do you got?
All right, Rob. Well, what I got is the 2017 Japanese movie One Cut of the Dead.
I've never heard of this.
This movie is 100% rated on Rotten Tomatoes. How have you missed that?
I don't know. I guess I already love it because it's at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
You have to. That's not an easy accomplishment.
It's not really.
So
It's one review though. It's only one review.
Yeah, that might be true. Now the thing about this movie is really you have to know as little as possible about this movie, I think, to actually enjoy it. So
okay.
I'm going to tell you I'm going to basically read to you almost verbatim what it says, like the most basic review of this movie. And here it is. Here we go.
Here we go.
All right. It says, this is a movie. Oh boy, no, hold on.
This is That's it. That's
This
all
is
I
a
know.
movie. Yeah, no, here it is. So, a film crew filming a movie about zombies is attacked by zombies.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say. And the
Fair
reason why I even said that much is because it's true, but it's not necessarily 100% true at the same
You're
time.
lying to me.
So, yeah. So,
well, if it's something of
yeah.
the dead, obviously there's going to be zombies in it.
One Cut of the Dead. So,
That's
yes.
right.
So,
Thank you,
so I'm not
George
gonna say,
Romero.
I'm not going to say much more than that. Even if it would help the podcast to tell you more, I'm not going to. I'd rather hurt the podcast and help your viewing experience. But
well, it's fitting for our 20th episode anniversary because I did this to you on episode 1 with
Very
the babysitter.
true.
I told you don't know what this movie is going in, so it's fitting that you would do this to me now.
And then you're right, and I'm glad I'm getting the opportunity to do it. This movie's won a lot of awards in Japan, and so I'm excited for you to see it. But I am gonna give one more preface to this movie.
Oh boy,
get through the first 35 minutes.
It's awful.
People have quit on this movie at that time and regretted it.
Okay, well, I usually it's hard for me to quit on a movie like that.
This
at
movie
all,
will
but,
push your limits.
It'll push my limit. Well, I do love zombie movies. I do. I think it is an oversaturated market, no matter how you slice it. The original Dawn of the Dead is absolutely my favorite zombie movie of all time. So I usually will give these movies at least a fighting chance because there's a number of them that I do enjoy.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see. The gauntlet's been thrown.
We have to see, and like I said, you'll know exactly why I say that at the 35-minute mark. But you got to get through the first 35 minutes to really appreciate everything this movie is going to try to do. So I'm kind of nervous if you're going to like it as much as I do. I think you're either going to hate it or love it. I don't think it's going to be right down the middle
This is
type deal.
interesting. Yeah, you're not. I don't feel like you come to the table a lot with a movie like this where you're unsure if I'm going to like it. It's usually my
Well,
bag.
it's so funny because to me, I find it a little bit divisive in that way. I love it, but I feel like, oh man, so many people would hate this. But it's rated 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I guess nobody does. But I'm just like, I can't imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's no. I'm welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. I'm bringing you a movie that's critically acclaimed that I don't know if you're gonna like.
Right.
So
Yep.
Yeah.
So now the shoe's on the other foot.
Right. Challenge accepted, everybody. Challenge accepted.
All right. Well, now that same challenge is going to all the listeners of the podcast. If you guys haven't seen One Cut of the Dead, pause the podcast, go check it out, and then come back and see what Rob thought of this movie that I love.
Ray and Rob are currently watching The Film. You may be also watching The Film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching The Film. They'll be right back when they're done watching The Film.
All right, everybody, we're back from One Cut of the Dead.
No, we're not.
What?
We're not done.
We're not done.
It's only been 35 minutes.
The credits were rolling.
This is what I was warning you about.
What?
You have to get through the first 35 minutes.
Well, I mean, what do you mean? The credits were rolling. It's
Just
the end of the movie.
Keep going.
What? All right, we're messing with you. We watched the whole thing. But that is a bit of the twist, though.
That is
a
the
big twist.
It's
The movie ends halfway through.
Yes, a little less than halfway through, and
Right.
so then it really gets going, and it's a different thing.
Right, it's a whole different movie
Yeah.
altogether.
So first of all, let's even say that. So first of all, are you mad that this isn't really a horror movie?
I mean, I am betrayed a little bit. I don't know. I am
Uh,
hurt.
Yes. Well, we don't do themes, as we
You
mentioned in the
lied
before
to me.
section, and so the theme of this was that it was not really a horror movie.
That's true, and you know what? It's fitting for you to bring me a movie that you claim is a horror movie, but it's questionable whether it's actually a
it's-
horror movie.
I don't think it's really like a meta Hollywood
Yeah,
movie to me. But
absolutely. Yeah, so it's super interesting. So obviously, if you've watched this movie, you realize the first 35 minutes is this single take zombie movie, One Cut of the Dead,
right.
and then the second half of the movie is basically the making of that first 35-minute
Yeah.
movie
And why it was so bad in parts.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's definitely
So-
a new take on the zombie genre. So, man, kudos on that.
So, what were you thinking those first 35 minutes? Like, because I think the first time you watch it, it's kind of a hard watch. I had like I'm not really enjoying myself. Upon rewatches, it's funner.
I actually really enjoyed the first
Did you?
35 minutes.
Good.
Did
Did you have a feeling they were up to something?
I
or-
had a little bit, yeah. So like, obviously, some of like the moments, like you said, are kind of wonky. You
Yeah.
know, through the first 35 minutes, you're like,
It's paced
okay,
weird.
right? But to be fair, like there is a cultural difference between American
Sure.
and like a Japanese film. So like, it's. So I can kind of let some of that stuff go. Like the comedy's a little different at
Yeah.
times, and comedic moments hit differently on either side of the Pacific. But but I did have I even had in my notes like another level removed, like because it was like them filming a horror movie, and I'm like, I have a feeling there's another level
behind
beyond
this level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did kind of get that possibility a little early on.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Because like I said, to me, I thought the first 35 minutes when the first time I watched, I think it's really 37 minutes, but who's counting? But it's just like this is like not funny. Like I thought this was a comedy, or at some point it's not really all that funny. Like
Sure.
like I don't know if it makes a ton of sense. In some parts and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of an interesting take on like zombie lore. It's like they were raised by a curse or like
Right.
something. Like they had
Right.
they made the blood stars and like the pentagram or whatever, and then like raised the dead, and so that was kind of interesting. But it's I do think one thing that I find interesting is that they kind of. So obviously the movie shifts in the second half where you meet who these people really are instead
Right.
of the parts that they're playing. But the fun part is I think you kind of imprint the parts that they were playing the first 35 minutes onto who they are in the second act,
Sure.
the second half.
Yeah.
So like if you do find yourself kind of emotionally connected to any of the characters, in that first 35 minutes, you find that challenged a little bit in the second half, and we'll get into that with some certain characters for sure. But
Yeah, because you almost see their arcs backwards.
Yeah.
In some ways.
sure.
and then you get to get explained as you kind of rewatch the making of
Right.
the first 35 minutes. You get to kind of, you get the making of that arc and how it happened.
Yeah. But but even being that 35 minutes, for as kind of cheesy and campy as it is, like I think there are some actually pretty interesting little moments in it. Some interesting character stuff. The two leads of One Cut of the Dead, are having this fling, and the obviously the director's insane.
Right.
Like, I mean, right off the bat, it's like hyperdrive insane, and you're like,
Right.
what the hell's wrong with this guy? And like, obviously you find out, but
Yeah. Yeah,
and
and
it's warranted.
she ends up having to kill her love,
Right.
who
Yeah.
was like wearing zombie makeup because he was pretending to be a zombie, but then
Yeah.
turns into a zombie, and
Mhm.
she thinks she's a zombie, and
Right.
there's
But the technical side of it is mind blowing.
that it was
like,
done in one cut.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just thinking back on that 35 minutes. I mean, I just some of the camera movements and the way that it was synced up. I mean, bravo.
Right.
I mean, you can be even if you don't like this movie, you have to be impressed by that.
Right. And well, I think when we maybe talk about the themes of the movie, I think we'll kind of discuss that, like when we
Sure.
talk about what's going to happen, because I do think that is part of it. This stuff's not easy to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, no matter how bad it is,
Right.
it's still a huge amount of effort and
Oh,
work
man.
that goes into the making. And I think that is really kind of what the movie speaks to. But even there was that one part where like it's the start of that really long chase where the female actress, I don't know how to address her as her character's name or her
Is it
real name.
Chinitsu?
That's the character of
Chinatsu?
One Cut of the Dead,
Right.
the fake movies
Right.
like name, yes. But that really long chase where she goes into, where it starts with her leaving the van,
Oh,
and then she
yeah.
goes and gets the fights to get the bag.
That's when the camera
hits the ground. I remember the first time the camera hit the ground, I'm like, they're just trying to make a bad movie now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they're not, like, what are they doing here? But what's funny is because I don't want to like jump the shark too much talking about it, but like I always kind of feel like as a viewer, in the second half of the movie when we're watching it get made, and we know why it's happening, but the I don't know what position she would be, some producer that's watching it on screen, and
Yeah.
she doesn't know what's going on. So she was like us in
Right.
the first half of the movie,
Right.
where we're like in the loop, and she is where we were sitting, and she
Right.
is saying some of the things that we're like, what the F now is going
Right,
on? You know what I
right.
mean? Like, why is the
Why
camera
do you
sitting on the
stop?
ground?
Right, yeah.
I don't get this.
Right.
So I think it's kind of funny that she kind of takes your role as you kind of more take a different role when you watch it again.
Definitely. Like I said, the lore aspects of it are fine. I think it's enough of a story to kind of get you through that 35 minutes, but the story really does start once One Cut of the Dead ends,
Right.
and the movie
Credits go
the
through.
credits go through. You're watching the movie, you watch this thing, and then you get to the end, and then there's credits, and that you're kind of, you said, you get a little freaked out. You're like,
Yeah.
wait, what's happening?
Right.
And obviously at that point, my suspicions were correct. Then
the whole thing changes.
The whole thing changes, and then you remove to this next level, and you are with all of these actors and kind of like having that put together.
Yeah, and the film is like visually, it's completely different. It's like high def now, as
Right.
opposed to like being like handheld.
Yeah, like 16 millimeter handheld.
it's tonally, it feels like, I kind of write in my notes like it feels like a TV show, and
Yeah.
that might be a cultural thing, but they are making a TV show, so I don't know if that was an on purpose thing. That almost feels sitcom-y at times, like
Sure.
you know what I mean. The way they do the credits or the introduce, there's some musical overlays that are very like sitcom-y,
Right.
reminiscent to me. And then you start to, we see the guy who we know as the director,
Right.
see him in real life and how he starts to become the director of this, and the exposition of what's going to, like, what he's tasked to do. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it starts to get interesting. And I think you see where all the breadcrumbs were leading you to.
Well, definitely, and again, kind of going back to this idea of knowing who the characters were in the first 35 minutes compared to who they are now.
Right.
You kind of see a change. So in the director, and like I said,
Just a
he's
psycho.
insane, right? Like he's yelling at Chinitsu in
Yeah.
the beginning, and you're like, I even wrote it down, like the line is just so biting, where it's like, you don't feel like 'cause your life is fake.
Right.
You know, and like
Fake. Yeah.
and all of that, and everything you say is lies,
Right.
and like stuff like that, and it's just, you know, he's in her face, and obviously like she's distraught,
Yeah.
you know, because of it, you know, for sure. And then Ko, you know, kind of consoles her, but then when you meet, you know,
The real
director, Higurashi.
That's his last name.
Higurashi.
Takayuki.
Higurashi, yeah.
Yeah.
He is completely the polar opposite.
Such a sweet
he's
man.
the sweetest guy. He doesn't
Yeah.
like he is so unassuming, and he does not think about, you know, think very highly of himself, which I think is kind of funny. I have the line. Oh, where does it go? Fast, cheap, but average
Right.
is how he like describes
Describes
himself.
his
And like
style.
the producer guy who's like trying to pitch him as the director is like, say the line, say the thing. It's funny about yourself. And it's like, I'm fast, cheap, but average. And it's
Right.
like, okay, like, but you know, but then what they ask him to do takes anything but that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Anything but average.
Yeah, and it, you know, it's a crazy idea to try to do this 30-minute TV show live.
I was gonna say,
not
that's
just
kind
in
of
one cut,
yeah,
but
it's
live. Well, and another thing that's revealing about him is, you remember when his daughter, I think, is telling him about, or no, he's telling his wife about the accepting the job, and he's like, there's no way this could be done, and she's like, did you say no? He's like, no, of course I didn't. He's like, yeah, I knew you wouldn't. You don't have
the guts to say no.
So it's like, oh, this is just a cowardly average man.
Sure. But also
Yeah.
desperate, you know, he
Sure.
wants that opportunity. Like, obviously, I'm sure this is really sort of reading between
Biggest
the lines,
thing.
maybe the biggest thing he's,
Yeah.
you know, had the opportunity to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, he's not going to say no.
And as we learn more about him, we know that he really doesn't have it. You know, his daughter's approval. She thinks he's lame, or
Right.
you know, she doesn't give him a lot of the time of day. You know, when you have teenage kids, they, you know, pull away from you, and I feel like he's going through that too.
Sure. And she's got a little bit of the fake director in her as well, because she gets a little crazy when she like yells at the child actor about fake tears versus
Right.
real tears.
Yeah.
Whew.
She is more like the director we
You
saw in
old
the first
hag.
half of the movie.
Right. Calls the mom an old hag. Don't listen to that old hag.
Yeah.
Old hag, are you talking about me? Like, it's...
Yes. Yes, it's something about child labor laws being broken that she didn't agree with. I
Sure.
don't know, but
But it sets up an interesting dynamic, because obviously
Right.
she wants to do what he does, but she has the intensity that he doesn't necessarily have. So we
Right.
kind of go through a journey through the process of making this, and we'll get into it.
Yeah.
That I think is actually very interesting.
yeah, I think that, you know, they give a lot of characters some moments if you're paying attention. You know what I
Definitely.
mean? Like there's only so much time. There actually is a huge cast to like pull this off. Just like pulling off a movie takes a lot of people to do.
Definitely.
You know, a lot of them have dual roles or acting, but they also have to do something else behind the scenes because you know they have to save space and stuff. So,
Mhm.
but they do give a lot of people those little moments. And you know, I guess we can get into it. They don't spend a lot of time like. They kind of introduce you to the cast at a table read.
Yeah,
You get to know
very
like
quickly.
one little part of their backstory,
Mhm.
and then it's pretty much let's go into the making of this movie.
Right.
Like how did the One Cut of the Dead that we watched already, like tisk for task or get made.
Right.
So
Yeah.
um,
And again, those juxtapositions I think are interesting. So like Ko in the movie, you kind of attach to because he's the good guy. You know, he's
Right.
the guy, like he's the
hero.
He's the hero, if you will, yeah, in a way. And but then his, you know, real life counterpart, Kazuaki Kamiya.
Yeah,
Kamiya.
sure.
We'll go with that.
Kazuaki
Apologize.
Kamiya is what I would say.
I apologize for
We're
that.
trying.
We're trying. I am so sorry if you are out
Sound
there, man.
beautiful when they're said by other people. Other than
Exactly,
us.
not by me though. And but he's kind of a
Douche.
douchebag.
He
Like,
is a
yeah,
douche.
he's just like
Yeah.
self-important and just like, I mean, he's
Yeah.
like that teen heartthrob actor kind of guy.
trying to
and just-
think
thinks very
like
highly of
everything's just
himself.
so deep. You know, he
Right.
sees things at a different meaning than other people. He
Sure.
basically overthinks.
Yeah,
You know.
and calls that intelligence and
Right.
intellect.
And then Chinetsu, who is real movie name is Aika.
Mhm.
You know, she's
Pop
from
star.
yeah,
She's
she's the pop star, and you know she doesn't want to get dirty, and she says it's because the agency won't let her, and she doesn't think she can cry, and she wants to use fake tears. She doesn't really want to act.
Yeah,
She wants to be in the movie, but she doesn't want to do any of the hard stuff.
right. So it's, you know, and then you get introduced to a couple of cast members that don't end up in the movie.
Right.
You know, there's the the original makeup artist
Yes.
and
The original director.
and the original director, right?
Right.
So that's the kind of the fun thing. So they get mixed in, and you're like, wait a minute, well, what happened to these two?
Yeah.
And then
Because
okay,
we
well,
know,
something's gonna happen.
we know the makeup artist is now, we find out is the second half of the movie is played by the director, his
Right.
wife, I think.
Takayuki's wife.
Yeah, and I think she's just referred to as now in the
Harumi?
movie.
I think or Harumi is her
Okay.
is her name.
Yeah, so she takes over the role because she's an ex-actress, but she had to give up acting because she gets too deep into her characters.
Which you
then-
kind of see in the first 35 minutes, when she kind of like goes stone faced and
Right.
like, I'm calm. I'm very calm. And you're like,
She'll
okay,
kill you. She'll kill you.
right? So yeah, and that the whole build up to that obviously is really great in the
Yeah.
second half, where you're like, why did you leave acting?
Right. Yeah, and then Takayuki, obviously, as we see in the first 35 minutes, takes over the director's role. But you can kind of see as they're getting ready to make this movie, Takayuki's not having a good experience. He doesn't really like anybody he's working with,
Right.
and then I think that scene that you mentioned, like that first scene that we introduced him, where he's screaming at Aika,
Yeah.
the girl. Now we kind of know, like, because he was improvising that part,
Right.
and that's not how the original actor was portraying that part.
No.
But now we know because of all those things we just said when we described her. She is fake. She doesn't want to get dirty. She doesn't want to, she doesn't want blood. She doesn't want to actually cry. And so when he was yelling at her about those things,
Right.
he was being serious in that moment.
And then when he goes after Ko, like, this is my project, not your project. He was able to kind
letting
of
off
embody.
some steam.
Yeah, he was able to embody those things that he had, kind of wanted to do. But again, when you're improvising, that's kind of what you do.
Right.
You take those parts of yourself and put it into the character.
Yeah.
And give it that realism.
But and it circles back to what we said, where his wife said he has no guts, and his daughter doesn't have respect for him, and that person is melting away,
right,
as he is screaming at them. He's being almost the person that he would want to be.
Right. Well, and don't forget, earlier in the movie, he watched Mao on set, like when she was kind of yelling at that child actor, and he kind of embodies that a little bit,
right?
Like in this,
right.
So like he kind of took a little bit of his daughter and put it into his character.
Yeah.
And
then it made Aika cry, so she's got real tears.
Real tears, exactly. She didn't need that. So, one character that we didn't talk about in the kind of like lead up into the making of the movie, but that I thought was kind of this like tragically sad clown story is Hosada.
Yeah, the original, the first zombie,
right,
the drunk.
The drunk.
I think what was his role? He was also the
Cameraman?
DOP technically.
Yeah, right, yeah. So it was super interesting because his story, so before they even started filming, like when they were in rehearsals or whatever, he was talking about like being a drunk and like losing his daughter. Yeah, and he's like laughing about it. And I'm just like, oh my God, like this story is tragic.
Yeah, it's funny because he's laughing about it. Like again, this part feels kind of sitcom because I'm like, what are we supposed to be feeling right now? Are we supposed? Because he's like laughing, like, yeah, she'll never see me again.
Oh man, what are you gonna do?
And then he's laughing until he's not laughing, and then he starts just breaking out and
then
crying.
But, exactly.
I think it kind of sets up this guy who's just can't help himself.
Yeah,
and that's basically what happens. Like, I mean, the majority of the reason why the first 35 minutes of the movie is, air quotes, bad, is because Hosada is the one who sets everything down this path of disaster because he gets drunk and he can now no longer perform his role. And because this is live and it like they're launching a network and this has to go on, they keep trying to find ways essentially to work around him at first.
Yeah.
And so,
But it was so funny because like again, kind of like knowing what was coming in that first 35 minutes, you see some of the pitfalls,
right?
Like some of the things like that were coming. So like when I guess the guy with the glasses, I forgot.
Hiroshi is his real name.
Okay,
it's not his character in the 35 minutes, but
right. So when he goes out and Hosada like spits in his face, like in
throw up,
like
spit,
right. You're like, wait, what's going on? Like zombies. I guess I can kind of see that. Maybe again, maybe that's a thing, whatever. But then you find out it's because he's drunk and he vomits in his face.
Well, the funny thing is he was supposed to get thrown up on. Like that is in the script, but he gets thrown up on for real,
right?
Like because he does do the drunk throw up, and then I think it's a really funny scene as you see like they're dressing, like as Hiroshi's getting like they're taking his, because he loses an arm too at this moment. So as they're like getting him dressed and camera ready for this, like having lost his arm. He's just crying because he's got throat. He's like, please wipe my face. Please wipe my face. He's just like squealing and whining.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious, I think.
Yeah. Well, and and it's funny because all of these things are seen as weirdnesses. As you're watching that first 35
Right.
minutes, you're like, this okay, this feels a little off. This feels a little, but like it, it's kind of funny because I think in some ways all of these things kind of make it more interesting
Mm-hmm.
in a way, and I
Yeah,
think that's
they don't
kind of
ruin
like,
it.
yeah, they really don't, and I think that's kind of maybe what they're kind of going for in some of these things is how those things, those imperfections and those kind of spontaneous moments make One Cut of the Dead what it was.
Right.
And yeah, but obviously, there are many things that don't go right.
Yeah.
And
We got the pooper,
right. Oh my
guy
god,
who drank the hard water.
it was really funny because I noticed when we were first watching it, and I said, like, man, why is that guy just sitting there? Like, because he's the sound guy again. I
Yeah.
don't remember his name, but he's just like sitting there, and he's like he's kind of just sitting in the background while all this stuff's happening. Shinsuke. He's just sitting there, and I'm like, why is he just sitting there? That's kind of odd.
Yeah.
And then
not
he tries
doing
to
much.
sneak out that one
Yeah.
time, and like the director's like, where are you going? No, and he's like, it's like he's like wants to tell him something, but he just can't do
Right,
it. And
right.
like you find out later, it's because he has to poop.
Really bad.
Really
And so
bad.
when he goes outside, when he does leave, and then he starts screaming, and you think it's because he's getting attacked by a zombie, of course, but then
Right.
you actually realize he's screaming because like everybody's trying to stop him from going, and he's trying to not poop all over everybody.
Right.
So I don't know. That's just the kind of thing. That kind of stuff when you get gets contextualized and funny. But like you said, though, it works in the movie because you just think he's getting eaten by a zombie.
Right.
You don't realize he's going through this personal trauma of like, I don't want everybody to see me have diarrhea.
It's coming out.
Yeah. Well, then like a few minutes
What's
later, I think
coming
it's just
out?
it's. Well, my favorite scene is like very next scene after that. He's put, or maybe it's two scenes after that, but the next scene with Shinsuke is he's on the side of the building
Oh my
pooping,
god, yeah, pooping.
and then the director's like, we have to do your makeup now. Like
It's
so,
like while he's
the
pooping.
cameraman is doing, or the makeup woman is doing makeup to the sound guy as he's having this diarrhea episode, and he's just crying about it. You can't feel any more shame than in that moment.
Definitely. But it's funny. I think in a scene, in scenes like this, or I should say in sequences like this, because obviously once it starts, they just keep going.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're seeing the behind the camera side of it, but it's still propelling forward at
Right.
the same pace. And one thing that was just really interesting was how much of the character work they were still able to pack in to that freight train that was going, with Mao, kind of
Yeah.
being in the control booth and like basically just taking over at
Yeah,
one point.
not letting him pull the plug when
Right.
they had to start. Basically, when they had to start improvising.
Yeah, she basically saved the production, in
Yeah,
all honesty.
definitely.
Like, she jumped in when nobody else knew what to do. The producer guy's like, I don't know. And she's
Yeah.
like, listen to me. You're going to do this. Everybody, we're going to take it from this page. You're going to do
We
this.
know
Like,
she's controlling.
make a decision. And it was good. Like,
Yeah.
she was able to take that, what people might perceive as a weakness, and, kind of make it work
Right.
in that moment. And, I think, I think for me, one of the gems of the movie, and this kind of, I think maybe even ends up being somewhat of the theme of the movie, is the actual thematics behind Mao and Takayuki,
Yeah.
like their relationship. And, kind of taking a step back for a moment when Hosoda was talking about his daughter and like all of that, then it like cuts to Takayuki in his apartment with all of like the pictures
Of him and his
of
daughter.
him and his daughter when she was young, and like with the camera and like her on his shoulders and like all of that stuff. And, it really kind of sets up this idea of parenthood,
Right.
Leaving the nest. We know she's getting ready to leave. He's
Yep.
worried about her being able to, make a living. He knows what she wants to do, but she obviously has certain people skills that are going to make it hard for her. Lack
She's
thereof.
gonna have to overcome these.
Right, overcome her lack of people skills to make it work. But she has the talent.
Yeah.
So like, and we see that, through this sequence, where, she kind of steps up into the moment, just like he does.
Right.
His
Exactly.
character shifts, from that timid, just average guy
Right.
to a guy that's like, I'm going to make
He's
this
doing
work.
something above average. Absolutely. That's definitely, I think that is the crux of the movie to me.
Yeah.
Like I really like, like kind of like we mentioned, I think Aika is pretty cool because, again, we said the model girl that you see or the pop star, I should say, the girl that you see in the read along who doesn't want to get dirty, doesn't want blood, wants to only use fake tears. That's not the actress that pushes through this first 35 minutes. Like
No.
she is, because of the improv and stuff. She like, by the end of the movie, she's absolutely covered in blood.
Yep.
She's cried for real multiple times. She's obviously pushed herself to like the limits that she can as an actress.
Yeah.
She should be proud of herself, as an actress in this movie. And I think that that final shot when which we'll talk about, but like she's covered in blood, looking up at the camera. It's like that's a warrior there, not just some pop star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's super cool.
Absolutely, and I think we can go down the line.
Yeah.
After you talk about Ko, we were just talking
Yeah.
about him a few minutes ago, kind of being that insufferable kind of jerk
Right.
actor who just takes himself way too seriously.
Yep.
And really he just kind of gets jolted into this. We just need to do this, okay?
Right.
Like we just need to get in here and we just need to do.
You got to improvise.
Right.
You can't overthink this now.
Right. Like you just got to go.
Yeah.
And I think he eventually, kind of alluding to that last final shot and how they made it happen. When the pyramid is falling down, and
Yeah.
he kind of has to go up there, and once the crane
Right.
is broken for the crane shot, then Mao has the idea of putting everybody on a pyramid so that
They get the height
they can get
they
the height
need.
that they need. He has to go over. Ko has to go over and do it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's like something that I don't know if that actor that we met at that table read would have done that.
Exactly. I think, also the other thing is like right before that with Ko too, is there's that line, I can't think anymore because he's just improvised so much. And
Yeah.
the director is like, I think that's a good thing. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
yeah.
I love that about him. And then I think you're right. This whole crew, as we kind of mentioned, like the read-alongs, it was a horrible crew.
Yeah.
They were really hard to work with. Like there wasn't really anything good to say about any of them in the moments there. But at the end of the movie, they all come together, literally coming together to build this pyramid
Yeah.
and get the last shot, which is the key shot to end the thing. I think it's just really cool. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That whole kind of tracking shot where they follow
Aika.
Aika. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chinatsu, across the top of the roof, kind of over to the pentagram in blood and all of that. And
Yeah.
like like you said, that kind of warrior look on her face. And then, and when you see it on the reverse and kind of, all the crew creating this pyramid, Mao at the top,
Yeah.
be able to get
Holding the
this
camera.
shot. And like, they're all just, they have to have the countdown because
Right.
it's like, they have to hold it because they have to hold it through the credits. And
Yeah.
like, they're all just holding it together with all of their might.
Right.
And and then it just kind of it ends, and it's just
That's
everybody
it.
got that
was
big
it.
release. Like everybody's just like, we did it. Like for
We
as weird as this
actually did
was,
this.
with
Yeah.
with as weird as all these little moments were, like we actually did it.
Yeah.
And-
And I think what, the very next scene after that, the like executive watching it on TV is like, oh, it's over. I think it was great. Like couldn't tell
Right.
anything was wrong. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And I think, to me, I think about like what this movie is saying in some parts, or maybe is trying to say mostly is, right before that crane shot, the executive producer guy that was there on set was just like, who cares? We don't need the crane shot. Just shoot it from whatever height you can. It's like,
Right.
and I think he says the line of like, this is a TV show. It's not art.
Yeah.
And I feel like this whole movie is about the opposite of that. You know,
Right.
like it's kind of like we said before. This is an art, and so much work goes into making what. If you thought the first 35 minutes was bad, look how hard it was to do that.
Right.
Look how hard it was to make something that you thought was bad.
Yeah.
Imagine the amount of work and amount of talent it takes to make something that's good. It is art.
Yeah.
And I think that's, to me, I feel like that's what the movie's trying to say.
Absolutely. And also parallel, we have Mao and Takayuki. So like after this is all
Yeah.
done, she hands him the picture of her on his shoulders as a kid, which is what gave her the idea
Yeah.
of building the human pyramid to get the final shot without
Right.
the crane.
And they get
And-
that little look to each other.
With the smile, like
Yeah.
you get that real genuine.
So proud of
smile
you,
from
Dad.
Mao, right? Like you could just see the pride on
Yeah.
both of their faces for each other. She was proud of her father for kind of making this happen and being a part of this, and he was proud of her for saving the day
Right.
and really stepping up and proving that she can do this and she's going to be fine.
Yeah.
When she gets out into the world,
Yeah. She's going to be able to be successful.
yeah, she's going to be successful. So, I mean, I really, in the end, it is. I agree with you that it is about that thematic element of the art. TV versus art. Art.
Yeah.
This is art. It
Right.
is an art to do this. But I do think this movie ultimately is about the relationship between a father and a daughter.
Yeah, because Mom was still a bit of a train wreck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like to be fair, you're right. She really is the only one of the only characters who didn't really have any kind of arc.
No,
like
but she's hilarious.
But she's hilarious, man. Just
Pum.
real quick when she pum. Oh man, the whole palm stuff was so good. Like that whole do you have any hobbies? I teach self defense.
Yeah.
I'm learning pum.
At the end when she's completely snapped and she's just like it takes the whole crew to take her down. She's like, pum
pum
pum.
But and the best part was when she just popped up.
Yeah.
After she had passed out or whatever,
yeah.
They he had basically choke holded her, he sleeper holded her and put her out.
Yeah.
And then in that part when they keep stopping,
yeah.
And then she pops up real quick with the axe in her head and what's going on? And then he's and then he pulls her down or whatever.
yeah.
Because I remember that in the first 35 minutes and I'm like, what is that? Just some kind of weird spasm or something? That's weird. And then but I didn't think about it. You know what I mean? I was having so much fun. I just even in that 35 minutes, I was like, oh man, well, that was weird. But I guess she did the part. She went back to acting, but it was still a bit, like you said, a bit of a train wreck.
Yeah, she still gets her issue is she gets way too deep with her characters. And that's basically what happened here because I guess a lot of the part in the first 35 where she's trying to attack Aika was not really supposed to happen. She just went off the rails and was improvising to the point where she's like, "No, I must kill you."
I'm calm. I'm very calm. Yeah. And she even said that
to
Takayuki at one point,
yeah.
when they were outside before that part, and where they were, you could tell that she was kind of snapping.
Yep.
And I think didn't she yell at Ko at that point or something? She yelled at
I
somebody.
think so.
So it was really funny.
Yeah. It was.
But it was really clever. I will say, there are things that you kind of see in the making of in that second half where if you were going to make a movie like this, stuff that was really clever. So even though they had a backstory for why the camera went on the ground, we mentioned earlier, the camera guy got hit and he was having a back and was finally the other op got her opportunity to stand up and take the camera and keep going. So that was her little mini arc, which I thought was great. Gave her something. But it also kind of gave time to reset on the opposite side.
Right.
And then when they're on the rooftop and when they were so focused on Aika, when she's screaming and even when the producer this is going on really long, right?
Yeah.
But it was because they were setting up Harumi with the axe
they were
in
trying
her
to
head,
take her down.
right?
Yeah.
And it worked because that would be time when off camera when you were able to kind of set up this thing. There's a lot of really cool little techniques like that they did during that 35 minutes that it's mind blowing how good it was.
I think when you enjoy the second half of the movie, it's because you really do enjoy looking at that little stuff. Why was he freeze? Why was Ko freezing every 3 seconds at the very end? Like you said, they were trying to build the pyramid. Every time the pyramid wasn't working, they're like, stop, hold on, we can't get there too quick. The pyramid is not ready.
Yeah.
And then why was she crying for so long? Oh, it's because they were trying to get now in the movie it was the Harumi or whatever, the axe in her head and knock her out, basically.
Knock her out, really.
So it's just really kind of fun. Why was the camera on the ground so long? Oh, the cameraman blew his back out and the assistant had to take over. So it's really kind of fun to kind of see those things that you thought were glitches, or just bad filmmaking at first, have it explained away.
Yeah. But then, to add another level to it, in all honesty, over the end credits, you actually get to see them making the actual first 35 minutes, which is not, it's not what you see as being the back half. So it's another level removed because they really made that first 35 minutes as a professional film crew. Yeah. With the mistakes in place.
In one cut.
Right, in one cut.
But doing it on purpose.
Doing those things on purpose, knowing they had to have that, cut in the backstory.
And the special features, Rob, that is you can watch that. That was filmed on a GoPro, and that you can watch that.
I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna do that. Again, really mind blowing sequence. Thinking back on it, I keep picking out moments where I'm like, oh wow, that's just super cool.
And the movie comes at you quick, so
it does.
You watch the first 35 minutes, and you're like, okay, what? Then you got about 10-minute break where you're introduced to the characters, maybe 15, and then it's back into all right. This is what happened.
Yeah.
This is where the first 35 minutes. So it paces like a train, like a speeding train.
Yeah, it keeps going.
But it works.
No, yeah.
Because like you said, in that speed, the amount of the fact that they're able to get some of those themes that that I was mentioning, the fact that we get all these little character moments that just make it a little bit rewarding for him, and him, like to do that in the pace that they were doing it, and a lot of it being in one cut and stuff. It was really impressive.
Yeah, and like I said, utilizing your time. That first 35 minutes, setting up certain character elements there, but then really delivering on them. In the second time, you have to see that again. You know, that same sequence again, just from a different angle. And really,
they do a good job too of like doing the first 35 minutes again, but doing it different enough where you don't necessarily feel like you're just watching the same thing again with more context. Like,
for sure,
it's shot differently. Sometimes you miss big segments of the first 35 minutes because you're watching the behind the scenes that go into it. So,
right.
So exactly. It works. It just works. So, all right, Rob. Well, I mean, let's not belabor a dead zombie here.
The Walking Dead.
Did you like this movie? I was a little iffy.
You were a little iffy. Well, you told me in the beginning that I would either love it or hate it.
I did.
And it wouldn't be down the middle for me.
No.
And you were right.
Oh,
I love this movie.
Yes.
I love this movie.
Are you going to rate it 100%
so
on Rotten Tomatoes?
You know what? It would be pretty darn close. If it's not 100, it's in the 90s for sure. But yeah, it's like I said, I there were so many layers to this movie that just worked.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest thing about it is that it's not a zombie movie per se. You know what I mean? And it's again a kind of another way to kind of take that genre and turn it on its head again. But I think, like I said earlier, the thing that really sold me on this movie is that it is really a story about a father and a daughter. You know, with all of these things going on with this, you know, these impressive filmmaking techniques that they're kind of doing, you know, to do this one shot, I think the best part is still the father-daughter relationship and what comes out in the end.
Hits.
It is. It really is. And it's commendable, like you said, to pack as much story as they did into this movie, even for some of the smaller side characters. And I mean, it was a ton of fun, a metric ton of fun.
I actually probably was leaning more toward that you were going to enjoy the movie. I thought the meta part of it you would really enjoy, the making of the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't want to oversell it.
Sure.
And I do think, you know, the first 35 minutes, if you think that's too much of a grind, maybe the back half would have enough. Like, the back half has a lot of work to do to overcome that, potentially for some viewers. Sure. But I think it does. But yeah, so I didn't want to oversell it to you. I had a feeling you were going to.
Well, you know, I love movies about making movies.
Right.
So I think, you know, this kind of definitely falls into that
category. I think this is one of the better one of those, in my opinion.
I don't disagree.
All right, Rob, before we get out of One Cut of the Dead, tell me recently what you've been doing, what you've been watching.
Let's see. You know, as I kind of did with Phantom, it's the October season, so I watch a lot of horror movies, and I do rewatch a lot of horror movies, more to the point. So but I did watch a couple of new ones. So I watched one called Oddity.
That's odd.
It is. But it's actually a really good Oddity. It's on Shudder. It's a Shudder original. I subscribe to Shudder.
You love Shudder.
I do, and I subscribed to it earlier this year, late last year. Haven't looked back. It's great. Like and to be honest, it's a great streaming service for their original content, let alone just, you know, their repertory content. Like their original content is almost worth price of admission on its own, and this is part of that. So it's an Irish horror film about a couple who the wife ends up being murdered at a remote rural house that they are renovating, and, you know, survived by her husband, who's a doctor. And then a year later, her twin sister kind of discovers that something maybe weird kind of happened. You know, so that, like, the night she was murdered, a guy comes to the door and is like, "I saw somebody come into the house. You need to get out." And she's like, you know, "What? I don't believe you." Like, he's like, "Let me come in and I'll look." And she's like, "No." But it's interesting. So, like, the sister has the surviving sister is kind of a clairvoyant. So she ends up, like I said, realizing that something's off with the situation. And there's this interesting kind of wooden life-sized mannequin doll that comes into play. That
everybody has.
Super creepy, right? It's super creepy, super interesting, but it's very atmospheric. It's really cool, so I highly recommend that. And then I watched, Max recently released their new adaptation of Salem's Lot.
Right.
As you know, I'm a big Stephen King fan for the books, so
Sure,
I've
of
read
course.
Salem's Lot, amongst many others. And it was good. Like it was fine. I will say it's always hard for me.
The good fine description is not the best,
It's
though.
not the best. No, it's not. It's not. It's hard for me to with Stephen King adaptations. Again, I'm
Right.
such a huge fan of the
And obviously
books. Like
Stephen
he's such
King
a
feels
great
the
writer.
same way.
Well, for
For a
the
lot
most
of it.
part, for a lot of them, for some of them, he definitely feels that way. And this one kind of was in development hell a little bit. I think it kind of got delayed multiple times. I think partially because of the pandemic and
Yeah.
some other stuff. But it finally came out. I think it's relatively faithful, in all the ways that it should be. I think production design wise, like it fit for what they were going for because it's period. It's not like
Right.
they're trying to update it and make it modern or anything like that. So if you're a fan of the book, it's worth a watch, and it's probably better than the original like made for TV movie. If
Right.
you really want to, because I mean, again, like that was hokey in its own way. But yeah, so again, you're a fan of the book, give it a watch. You may not love it, but it's a perfectly fine adaptation of the book.
Cool.
But one thing I did want to mention, and this is a shameless plug for ourselves, if I can do this. One thing I did rewatch.
You definitely can.
One thing did rewatch is The Babysitter.
Oh, episode 1.
Episode 1. So if you have not listened to episode 1 of Say Hello to My Little Film, go and check out The Babysitter and rewatch it. We did a double feature of the Samara Weaving movies. We watched that and Ready or Not, which I don't know if you've seen.
I haven't, but I was wondering why you didn't watch Babysitter 2.
Because it's not as good as the first. But
yeah.
I may slip it in at some point. But Ready or Not is another great Samara Weaving movie where she marries into this kind of board game magnate family, and on her wedding night, she's like the tradition is that they have to play a board game,
Okay.
or just a game in general, and it kind of takes a very dark turn. But she's
board games do.
Yeah, sometimes
there's really
they do.
competitive ones.
Exactly. But yeah, Samara Weaving is fantastic in both The Babysitter and Ready or Not.
Cool.
So you should check out Ready or Not.
Okay.
Everybody else
think
listening
about it.
should watch, or I should say listen to watch The Babysitter and listen to the first episode of Say Hello to My Little
Please
Film.
do.
Throwback. So what about you, man, though? What have you been watching?
Not a ton. We've had some technical difficulties around our area.
Yep.
Recently. We've been impacted by some hurricanes. So went some days without power, but once we got power back, I did kind of get back to finishing up some series that I was really close to finishing up. And this is, speaking of callbacks, I'm struggling here, but I finished Slow Horses season 4, and I think maybe in one of our first 2 episodes I talked about finishing up Slow Horses season 3. So
you may have.
So,
I know you've talked to me personally about Slow Horses.
If
I can't remember if you said that.
some people can go back and listen to the first couple episodes and let me know if I did. That would be helpful.
Either way, we just want to get those numbers up on those early episodes.
Definitely.
So do that either way.
But yeah, Slow Horses though it's on Apple TV Plus. Gary Oldman. It's to me it's like the best spy show on TV. It's really good. People should check it out. It's a whole season. It's 6 episodes. The great thing about Slow Horses is at the end of the season they show you the preview for next season. So it's like it's already in the can. It's already been made. Now we just need to I'm like just release it now then.
Right.
But
it's definitely coming.
A lot going on. Does all the spy stuff that you'd expect. Does it really really well. It's definitely worth a watch. It's really cool. The other series I finished, which I wasn't as excited about, but I had to give it a try, was Rings of Power season 2.
Oh yeah, I haven't started yet. Obviously, I watched season 1, but I haven't started season 2.
Yeah, it was hard for me to get into Rings of Power. Yeah, I thought the first season was fine.
Yeah,
but there's just so much going on that you're like, it definitely feels like it's trying to be Game of Thrones, like because there's like with this multiple storylines.
Definitely.
And you don't really know where they're going, so it's kind of like, what am I watching? Like what's there's no clue about what the payoff is. I will say in this season, it's much of the same, but at least the characters' motives are cleaner. You kind of know where they are going. That where they want to get to by the end of the season. You know how it connects to the bigger picture a little bit, which is helpful too.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just like, all right, I get this. I know why I want this to happen, or I know why I don't want that to happen. You're literally watching the creation of the rings of the dwarves and the rings of 9 for the men and stuff. So there's some stuff that makes sense that you're connected to. You know where the ending's going to get to. So I think the season was better.
Oh, good.
I don't know, like season. I wish the episodes weren't 150, 75 minutes long,
That's
but because
crazy.
it's like just you could trim this up just a little bit.
Sure.
But I'm not invested enough to want to watch 75-minute episodes. But anyway, season 3, I would definitely give it a chance. I think they have to make. I think the deal was that they had to do 5 seasons. They weren't allowed to cancel the show. So
Oh wow! I think a lot of shows probably want that deal. How can they do that? How can they get that?
You'd
deal?
be the Lord of the Rings content,
right?
So,
Exactly.
but yeah, so I watched
Some
that. So
pull.
maybe a little bit of an upswing. We'll see. I don't know, but it's still not great.
Okay, well, I'm still gonna watch it.
It's better.
I'm
It's
still
better
gonna
than
jump
season
in.
1.
Okay, you sold me to at least give it a shot.
Yeah.
I will definitely do that in the near future.
All right, Rob. Well, I think we've wrapped up One Cut of the Dead, and that concludes October for us. Pretty good October.
Successful October. We had 2 for 2.
We both liked each other's movies, and so we are done. October's done for us, but it's not done for the audience.
Nope.
We are asking them to please like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't, leave us a review. If you leave us a 5-star review, we will read it live on air someday.
Yep, we were definitely planning on doing that at some point in our life.
Yeah.
At some point.
Before it's over.
If there is a comment section on whatever platform you are listening to, by all means, let us know what you thought of One Cut of the Dead. Did you love it? Did you hate it? We want to hear about it. Also, any recommendations that Ray and I should hear about another movie that we should check out. We always love to see that. We will be back. You know what? Next week.
Oh.
Yeah, we are back next week, everybody. This is a new surprise. We have a new podcast coming.
Yes, we do.
We do. It is called Say Hello, or I'm sorry, Hello Movies, My Old Friend.
Fell into that
See,
old
I
trap.
fell into that old trap.
That's how new it is.
That's how new it is.
Fine.
Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where we will be revisiting movies from our past, distant past, and see if they still hold up. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. We are going to be kicking off with the 1999? 2000?
No clue.
I can't remember. It's been so long. I'm so old now. The found footage classic, The Blair Witch Project.
Yes, we will.
So you're definitely going to want to stick around for that. This is gonna be an experiment. We're gonna see if we all can get through it together.
We're excited about it.
Absolutely. But then we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Say Hello to My Little Film, and it will be back to me.
We got to keep our streak alive.
Yep, we're gonna see if we can do it. It will be November, so we'll be done with the Halloween movies. But I think I got something pretty special.
Very cool.
So you definitely aren't gonna want to miss that. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob.
I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, everyone, I want to give you a little sneak peek of our next episode, which will be back to me. So I will be recommending to Ray Bound, the 1996 neo-noir crime thriller written and directed by the Wachowskis. Something that doesn't really fit anything that they've made after it, but I think you can kind of see their humble beginnings. It's a really great movie. It stars Jennifer Tilly, Gina Gershon, and Joe Pantoliano. So good. Can't wait for Ray to watch it. Can't wait for you to watch it. Don't miss it.